what would you like to get across for fellow Oneida County residents about your trip?
About my trip, I think it really brought forcefully home visually and sound-wise, and talking with people, some of the people that we did talk with, that our state really needs to pay attention to the chemical genocide that is happening, and that New Yorkers need to stand together and look at our officials, tell our county legislators and our town supervisors and our assemblymen and our senators, stop it. We will not be considered collateral damage for the shareholders' profitability. We have to be strong on this, because they can no longer hide the empirical evidence that this is the worst thing that can happen. It's chemical genocide. These people are ultimately dying due to the radiation contamination, due to the chemical toxicity contamination that they're continually being exposed to. This also includes the ground level ozone that most people don't cover, which is just as deadly as anything else that they could be drinking through water-wise.
And you mentioned somebody actually has radioactivity in them?
Well, actually, only that one family came forward. If they did even further testing, which they won't, if they tested every single person whose wells are contaminated with the methane, I think they will find that the radiation count on people is way higher than what they're allowing to be exposed. And there are specialists who are trying to get the information out. There's Dr. Theo Colburn, there's Dr. Eric London. I have documentation from the New York State Medical Society, the Pediatric Society, New York State say all these doctors saying, do not let it in this state. And our officials are disregarding this. You know, they're thinking that they're going to make money. I talked to one senator and he says, well, we'll just tax them. Well, guess what? They file as LLCs. So that limits their ability to be able to be taxed. You know, they think that they're going to be able to get more money, but at the cost of the people's health, long-term and short-term, obviously, because, you know, it's not only affecting the people, the animals are dying. I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary Gasland. Okay, in there's, if you look at the bonus materials, it shows where there's pictures. There's also blog spots as well, where people have documented where animals have drank from the frack pits, or even have drank from the spill water, and they don't even get 2 steps, and they drop dead. And
I heard that.
Yes. Well, you can't refute empirical evidence like this, and they're ignoring this at the cost of the people, and this has got to stop. Chemical genocide is chemical genocide, and this is wrong. It's a crime against humanity, and this has to stop, and it cannot be allowed here.
So basically, the legislators are taking what the DEC says that it can be done safely, and they're saying go ahead and do it?
And there is no safe way to do this.
According
the thermogenic methane, the radium is bonded chemically and physically to the methane. Okay, the chemicals that they're using that is toxic. Let me give you the definition of toxicity. It's a toxic, anything that's toxic is any substance that causes injury and death to a living organism. Okay, you cannot change that. You cannot make something that is inherently deadly not.
And that's what they're using to...
Exactly, right. And what they're finding, the radiation that is in the methane they call norms, normally occurring radioactive material. Well, now they're getting a form called T-norms, technologically enhanced normally occurring radiological material, because they're finding that the chemicals are actually stimulating the radiation in ways that they unforetold. Okay, and because radium is water soluble, that goes just like wildfire, you know, underground, above ground, it just spreads.
So if you know all this, the people in the DEC should know all this, and they should say that this is not safe, but how come they're saying that there's a safe way to drill? I
cannot speak for those people. I mean, I could be cynical and tell you what I think that, but
But these are state representatives who...
They are, and there are our senators. I had lobbied for 10 weeks before they went out on their vacation, and we had 23 senators signed on the moratorium bill to make the moratorium going one more year. But we had one faction of the political parties that didn't want to sign on. And that's because they're thinking that the money is going to validate this procedure, and it never does.
So is it split down the middle?
No.
It's not. There are some Republicans that are against it and some Democrats that are for it?
Yes. And
The first meeting I went to was in
the fracking fluid has shown up 28 miles from the nearest well.
Wow.
that's the most recorded one.
This was an oil, this was a Mobil Exxon retired fella, executive retired, they had moved to Cooperstown to retire. And that was his suggestion. He says the least our government should do is require a tracer, an inert tracer, so that would just increase the accountability on the part of the gas companies 100-fold.
Mm-hmm.
They would be so much more careful.
As far as what kind of tracer?
The only experience I have with anything like that is just simply something you would use in your septic system. If you think you have a leak or something, it's a dye.
Oh, okay.
It's an inert dye.
So just to see
and it's
where
a bright yellow or bright blue, and you can find where the effluent may be coming above ground. On that larger scale, because I learned yesterday, prior to Saturday, I was under the impression that it was millions of gallons of water per well, and we're being told that it is 3 or 4 million gallons of water per well. So on that scale, I'm not sure. This fella worked for ExxonMobil for 30 years.
All right. So basically, when we play this disc, what will we see?
You'll see what I saw.
Yeah.
Okay. You'll see what myself and the other folks that accompanied or went on the trip. You'll see what we saw, and what you'll see is dozens of homes that have gas vents installed on their wells, that have reverse osmosis filtration systems installed on their wells, that have what they affectionately are calling in Pennsylvania water buffaloes, which are tanks of fresh water that the gas companies are trucking to the homes to replace the well water that the residents can no longer drink. I'm not sure if you'll see, I think you have a copy of it, but you'll see a part of a contract that has a non-disclosure clause in it. And one thing I was amazed at what I'm hearing of what's going on there that I did not hear before, and we're finding out why we're not hearing about it. A couple of reasons. One, that part of Pennsylvania, television stations, Scranton, Binghamton, Elmira, they're really, remote. The local newspaper, I was told by one resident of Towanda that she was told point blank by the local newspaper not to bother writing any more letters, editorials, articles. They're not going to publish that. The non-disclosure agreements, I think that's why you're not hearing about the 92 wells that have been contaminated.
According to
because, according to this page in here.
There's a map.
According to
there's
folks.
a map.
But, who's saying that the wells are contaminated?
There's difference. There's a little key down here. It'll tell you it's either by the homeowner or it's by.
So these are other homeowners that don't have the actual drilling on, because they can't talk, right?
Well, for example.
Well, they know where they are. Well.
They're afraid to talk because if they talk,
right,
they won't get their water shipped in.
Right, but I mean, some of the wells are on other homes that the water's not.
Right.
Exactly.
These are the people that are saying. These are. The
And it's fairly easy if you're a local person. Like the two folks that showed us around Saturday, they've lived there their entire. Mike's lived there his entire life.
This group here that has put together this map.
And all you need to do is know the county and drive and see the water buffaloes in their front yard. You know what's happened.
And basically, someone has
Compiled the data.
and said that these are contaminated. So these oil companies are bringing in these water.
The gas companies are bringing in. They're trucking in the water for these people. Yes, yes. The other thing that I did see yesterday,
But they're still drilling on their property even though they're bringing in these water buffaloes?
Yes.
the thing is this drilling doesn't necessarily have to take place on your property in order for the contamination to happen,
Right.
all right? This horizontal drilling up to a mile, I've heard 1.5 miles, but I guess I'll stick with the mile. In any direction they want from the vertical well, any direction they choose, 360 degrees, they can go for up to 1 mile horizontally.
But the water buffaloes that they're bringing to people that they don't even have contracts with? Or they're just bringing them to the people that they have?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
The one farmer that had signed a lease, and all the people down the road, across the road from him and down the road, there were probably, what, 15, 20 houses? I think they got, they had not signed leases, the farmer had, the landowner, okay? He was the one who made the money, and everyone else got the bad water.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And you understand the compulsory integration law in New York State.
Which means?
Which means that once a gas company has 60% of the area that they want to harvest the gas from, once they have 60%, they have control of 60% via they have purchased the land or they have leased the land. Once they have 60%, they stop looking for any more leases because New York State law says that once they have the 60%, they can go anywhere in that area they want to, even under the land that, of landowners.
Oh, wow, so it can be like interspersed?
You are forced to allow them to burrow under your land and do this. They give you 3 choices. One choice is to accept a lesser royalty than the main property owner is getting. The next choice is to get nothing, absolutely nothing, and another choice is to help them pay for the well that they have drilled.
Well, to sign on as a full partner, and then you accept liability. That's a whole other issue. I'll tell you some things I did see. I saw tears running down a 29-year-old lady's face as she was talking about the fact on her home, which they were adding on to on a 2-acre lot. They can no longer drink the water. Okay, it has very high levels of what Toshia was talking about. It has very high levels of radium and barium and whatnot.
I mean, how do they know? Do they physically send samples?
They have tested it. Her blood levels, the barium her blood tests show barium levels that are just off the chart.
Which is a heavy metal, which is incredibly toxic to the human body.
And, I mean, they have to have tests beforehand to show that her barium levels weren't.
Well,
That's the problem. They're putting the onus of proof on the landowners instead of the onus of putting it on the corporations as they should to prove that they didn't do it. And how many of us, like at one point, one landowner had specified in the documentation that they had shown, she paid $4,000 to pay for their water to be tested. This is in the documentary, okay? And how many people do you know have $4,000
for a water test?
Exactly. And most of the chemicals, unless you test for specific chemicals, they're going to see that there's a chemical there, but they're not going to know what it is.
Okay. So don't you think that just the fact that these companies are bringing in the water buffaloes, saying that the water is not drinkable, should be enough to tell people not to do this?
I think that would be a very very safe assumption, yes.
But not according to our DEC or...
I don't know what, this isn't happening in New York State yet. I don't know where our DEC will be. I do know this, is that in the most recent press conference that Commissioner Martin gave of the DEC, one reporter asked a question, specifically asked a question to the commissioner, what would happen if a homeowner's well were to become contaminated? What would be the recourse of that homeowner? And the commissioner's response was, is that homeowner would have to do what anyone would have to do. It would be a tort issue. They would have to sue the gas company. And that was followed up with, would the state of New York have any role in that, in helping or supporting the homeowner? No, they're on their own. that was in his that was his comment in his press conference.
Doesn't make sense.
So the onus.
A lot of this, Mr. Liberatore, makes no sense. I'm still baffled.
So that's what you came back with, you just,
I'm having a very hard time, I really am, I don't know why, but I'm having a very hard time understanding that profit and money, that people's need for money is strong enough to do this to a community.
Communities, because it was more than one community that shows this. If you look at the map, you'll see that there's more than one town, more than one community.
so,
Another thing I saw that was very eye-opening, because there's been talk about where these bore cuttings, these well bore cuttings are going to, you know, essentially the stone dust that they bring up as they drill. And they have been going to landfills. In fact, I understand there's been 3 landfills in New York State that have accepted them. But we saw Saturday the local landfill and tons and tons and tons of this radioactive cuttings being deposited in their landfill.
yeah, last I heard, we didn't have any in the state.
Yes, we do.
We do.
They do.
At the meeting they had in Cooperstown last year, they said we didn't have any.
Yes,
Is it,
that's
are they new?
that's a misspeaking. Yes, we do in Chemung County. They were
Oh,
actually
wow.
doing it. And I have documentation on that if you would like to see that. They were accepting it, and they had people fighting it, stating, and that's where they gave them the Geiger counters that were set for the gamma rays, and they were saying, okay, we'll see, it's just low, instead of checking for the alpha rays. And it was the rating 226.
I watched last night, I came across on the internet a recording that a television station had done a few months ago, and I apologize, maybe last December, of a town meeting that took place in Towanda. And the panel, there were 5 folks there. It was the county commissioner, there was one representative. It was interesting. They said they had a very hard time finding anyone from the gas company that would be willing to sit on the panel, and they found one person. Really wasn't a gas company, was kind of in between okay? And some other folks, 5 folks on the panel. But just eye-opening as far as the questions that were being asked and the things that the gas companies do. I mean, there's one fella, and there was an unbelievable amount of opportunity for the audience to ask questions and be involved. And there's one fella just telling a story about, you know, the gas companies seeking out his 92-year-old mom, you know, in a nursing home, having them sign the contract, never contacting the daughter or the son, just the way they do things. And when he put in calls or whatever, they would not talk to us. Said, we have our signatures, end of conversation. So it's that type of thing that, because I shouldn't be so naive that goes on.
But there's a lot of people in need these days that will, you know, take the
Well,
money.
you know what? At the end of the day, I asked the fella who was showing us around, and by the way, I don't know how much you had covered here with folks, but I'm just amazed that you have these individuals in this community in Towanda, and basically they're saying, we're done, okay? It is here, it's not going to be stopped here, we have to live with this, or we have to leave, or whatever. But where they're getting any sort of good feelings out of this or whatever is they really want to help New Yorkers keep this out of New York, which I think says volumes.
So did they invite you guys down, or did you do this?
I'm not sure how the connection.
They, somehow from the hydro relief, from the hydro relief group.
Maybe. Well,
Whereas the rest of us who aren't, and I have a map of the unconsolidated aquifers in New York State that all I have to do is puncture one because they're all connected. I can show you this map.
wow.
And that's why they're going through the unconsolidated aquifers are composed of rock, gravel, and sand. So then they say, well, that's filtering. See the difference?
Oh, boy.
Open water.
See, there's
But
so
it's
many
not.
different ways and you know, we don't have a minute and a half to tell the whole story.
Do you
Yeah.
want me to get
But
the map?
you know, what I think is good about this is what's in the story or not. You're hearing this.
Oh, yeah.
And now you're saying I need to.
Well, it's the same thing that I've heard at each meeting that I go to.
Oh, okay.
And for me, the water buffalo thing, if they're coming in and saying that your water's not good to drink,
They're saying
how can they keep going on? It doesn't
They
make
keep saying, well, we're not sure exactly how this is happening.
They're saying they're saying we are being good neighbors,
Yeah.
we're being good community neighbors, and we don't take any responsibility for their
We're just
bad
doing
water
this
and
out
their
of, we're
wells.
helping you.
We're helping them out. But if these people start talking, guess what? The deliveries of water stop.
They stopped delivering in Dimmock.
We were told that they are living down there in a state of great intimidation. Everybody is intimidated. They're afraid because if they speak up, their water is going to be shut off. And there is nothing worse than that. These companies are totally outside the law. One of the head of one of the companies even said, we've been outside the law all these years and we're not going to be inside the law now. They're not beholden. That the Energy Act of 2005 that Dick Cheney pushed through
specifically
exempts them from the Clean Water Act.
Do you know about that?
The
Clean Water
Act. Clean Air Act. All of these
loophole.
safeguards, they are exempted from. They have absolutely no controls. They have absolute power. People down there were talking about the fact that they come in and they will have decided, okay, your access road is going to be over there outside of our house, and all of a sudden they've got 25 trucks digging up right next to their house, and the companies just tell them, we're going to do whatever we want on your land. And nobody can do anything to stop them. And these people are trapped because
They are going to be. Here's the scary part. Here's the scary part, and I'll use myself as an example. All right. So I have 50 acres up on Red Hill Road. I depend on 4 wells and a farm pond for my home and my business. If anything there happens, that business, we're done. Okay?
Same thing here at Spring Farm.
The other thing is this,
is
that
water,
50 acres up there is a big part of my family's assets, all right? Now, when we were at a meeting in Kirkland a few weeks ago, at that public hearing, Chad, what's your legislator?
Chad Davis.
Chad Davis was unable to be there, so he had a letter read on his behalf. And as a part of that letter, he listed 15 banks, many of which are local, that will not extend mortgages for any property that has gas drilling taking place on it or near it.
Or any property.
Or any adjacent property.
I mean, that's...
And that includes federal credit unions as well as HUD.
The real estate market is going to be killed here.
Now let me tell you the plus that we know. In New York State, the one advantage that we have over Pennsylvania, they're a commonwealth, we are a home rule state. So local municipalities have some authority in regulating through zoning this process.
Yeah, county lands.
Gary, I've never seen, I just stood there like, I've never seen so many tractor trailers in my life in one place. And this fella reminds me, Mike, he says, it's Saturday. Wait till Monday.
Wow.
And the pipelines. Oh my God, the pipelines.
As far as the eye can see.
People forget about the pipelines. And the interesting thing is that each company that comes in here will put in its own pipeline. They're not even going to share pipelines.
They don't play together
You
well.
should see the way the place looks like. It would be interesting to know what it looks like from the air. There are pipelines all over the place, and the condenser, the stations.
The dehydrator stations and condensate tanks. There are because the gas comes up wet. Okay, so you have to use the condensate tanks and the dehydrators. Okay, both of those event the VOCs, the volatile organic compounds, which contribute to the ozone thing there. So they're putting the toxins in the air, and people don't realize that, as well as the compressors that are used to continually compress the gas to move it through each level and then into the pipes. And then the compressor
I could not
The
believe
compressors, you should hear them.
You see Bonnie's barn there?
Yeah.
They're the size of that.
Oh, bigger than that.
Well, but there was one after another after another.
They were 3 times the size of that barn, and the sound was just absolutely deafening.
There's a specific legal term for that sound, and you could probably get that from Helen Slache, the legal, because she's the environmental lawyer dealing with all of this.
So we could do a story on this every day.
Oh,
it's a different piece.
I have documentation, factual from professionals. If you
This is the go-to lady for the information. Wow. She's got it all.
Tasha's done her homework. I just mostly stand there with my jaw on the ground.
We need the bigger businesses to help and say, for example, any of the businesses that use high volumes of water to make their
Matt
products.
Brewery should come out and say we are against hydrofracking. I mean, all of these businesses should go public. We are against it.
See, one of the sad things in Oneida County, I think, is up at Hinckley Reservoir. See, I don't think much is good. We're on the very edge of this Marcellus Shale, although the Utica Shale is up there.
Utica Shale is right.
So, you know, the
But they're
cities.
not talking about doing the Utica
Yes,
Shale.
no, they're going to be.
Oh,
And
yes.
I have the documentation of going after the 3 levels of shale, the Devonian, the Marcellus, and the Utica Shale. The Marcellus Shale comes up wet with oil. The Utica Shale is a drier shale. They're going to be going after, and they said, when they did this, they're going after all 3. Once they go down, they're going after all 3 levels. So you're talking over 2,000 to 3,000 feet. They're going to be running separate layers of horizontal line.
They are looking at. I tell you why I think
8
they're
wells
looking
per
at Utica.
pad.
At the Utica Shale is. I think they're more interested in the Utica Shale.
Mm.
It's a drier gas. It requires less of the processing
So why wouldn't they do that in the first place?
because
I mean, why say?
We don't really know what they're going to do here. Here's the thing. Gas companies aren't even here. It's brokers for gas companies. It's the brokers scrambling to get the leases so then they can sell them to the
Do they
highest
already have
bidder.
leases?
yes, they do.
Yes, there are leases.
They have
yeah.
people that have signed in going wrong.
Wow.
This is the map here. This is central New York. These are the unconsolidated aquifers. I live, let me see this here. I live right here. They plan on hydrofracking this whole hill. You see the size of this aquifer around me? These are all connected. Every single one of these are connected. Once they puncture this aquifer, guess what?
It's all.
It's gonna go like wildfire.
Including New York City, that isn't supposed to be
You
poisoned
see
for
right
9
here,
million people there.
and Syracuse as well, because
Yeah.
Syracuse is over here. And this aquifer goes down. All of these are connected. If you can trace where every single one of these aquifers are connected. And people aren't looking at this. These are all unprotected, unconsolidated aquifers that are being ignored. And you can have this map if
We
you
need
like it.
Assemblywoman Hance.
I can see it this way.
I want you to
dimensionally.
look, you have to look at your abstract and your deed.
Right.
All right, some people, when they bought their land, did not buy their mineral rights.
Mineral
The
rights.
person who owned it before them kept them.
So mineral rights.
Could
you can
be.
go on.
Right, so, look, for example, when my father purchased the family place that we have, that I have now, the person he purchased it from kept the mineral rights. Okay, so my dad thought, well, you know, there's nothing there, there's no diamonds, there's no, you know, Texas tea or anything, so he didn't care. Well, guess what? The landowner next to me, right next to me, owns those mineral rights. He's going in underneath me. So, and my well is only 42 feet deep. In methane migration, they've known since 1989, the journal Petroleum Technology published this article. The problem, the known issue of methane migration, it has been going on since 1989 that they know of, even before they involved this horizontal hydrofracking, which they haven't done until 2007 was when they actually started really doing what they're doing now. So when they say, well, we've done it for 60 years, it's an incorrect statement. I can give you the exact timeline of when they interjected each level of what they're doing now. And it never came, they didn't pull it all together until 2007.
And people who want to do this, or people that think money and progress and all this is good, they latch onto that very, very quickly. They've been doing this for 50 years, because that's what the gas companies will say. They haven't been doing this process. They haven't been doing high volume, slick water, hydraulic fracturing.
Long laterals. You have to use
Another
long
important thing is that a lot of people think that, oh, this is going to save us from dependence on foreign oil. All of this natural gas is going to go right down. It's going to be liquefied at the ports, put on ships, and shipped abroad to China, to God only knows where else. But it is not for
My
us.
understanding, there's facilities being built right now, and there's ships being built right
Actually,
now.
Oh, yes.
That can handle this
I have the
compressed
newest
liquefied
article.
gas and sell it on the open market.
Well, in the Department of Energy's annual report, 2007, February 7th, they specifically stated in there, any of the gas that was developed, that was harvested here, will be sent overseas.
I
This
feel
is the
bad for the
Department of
public. I saw a
Energy.
big sign coming back the other
I
day
have the
that someone had put in their
documentation.
yard
Wow.
Glad to share everything with you.
saying, they'd made a homemade sign, big 4x8 piece, nice job. And it said, drill, 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 bring a soldier home. And it's not true, that's not what's gonna, that's not what's gonna happen.
But, the mineral rights, it doesn't matter whether you have your mineral rights or not. Patterson in 2005, with this compulsory integration law, gave away our property rights. He negated all of our property rights. We will be forced to integrate on a compulsory basis with our neighbor. If they decide they want to make money, we're going to have to go along with it.
Unless
No
we can,
choice.
the most important thing is right now is to tell people, please, go to work for your town, tell your town
Yep,
governments.
and you said that on tape too, so.
Please, tell them, we don't want it.
The thing that impressed me, first of all, was that even in the library where she gave her little talk and where we saw a video, my eyes started to sting, and I started to cough from the air, and
Yes.
we were in the air conditioning of the library. Diane's eyes are blood red. I've never seen such bloodshot eyes on anyone in my life, and I said, as she talked about it, and I said, is everybody this way? She said, well, not everybody. She said, I happen to be very, very sensitive to it, but she said, there's a lot of people with very red eyes here. So immediately I got a personal sense of what the pollution will do to you, and we weren't even near anything. Then when we got out on the road, and there were all of these, the tractor trailers, the 80,000-pound monsters traveling the road and spitting all of their diesel all over the place. The roads again were very bad for the breathing. The thing, I think one of the things that impressed me most of all, I was prepared for the pads themselves. I was prepared for the lagoons with all of that toxic radioactive wastewater. I was prepared for that kind of thing. I was not prepared for the pipelines. The pipelines that are everywhere, uphill and down dale and here and there and everywhere.
Bisecting the communities.
Bisecting the communities. They are, people don't take into consideration the additional trucks, the additional heavy equipment, the additional seizing of people's land, the additional ugliness of these pipelines that are going to be crisscrossing our state willy-nilly if we allow this to get in there. And the sound of the compressors, the 24/7, the compressors that move the gas along the pipelines, it's just absolutely shatters your eardrums. If that's near someone's home, they'll either go mad or they'll kill themselves or they'll have to move. Those were some of the things that impressed me probably more than anything, that the realization as to the reality of those pipelines and the reality of the air pollution. Next.
I think what impressed me the most, or made the biggest mark on me that day, was the number of homes that I saw that they were having fresh water trucked to tanks in their front yard, that had reverse osmosis filtration systems, that had vents on their wells. The number of wells that have actually been contaminated to date in Bradford County, and I'm just totally surprised that the rest of the world doesn't know that. And I found out why, because of the non-disclosure laws, or the non-disclosure clauses in the contracts, the intimidation of folks to talk openly about their water wells, and due to the threat of the gas companies seizing to bring them fresh water any longer. Just totally amazed at the amount of wells that have been destroyed to date.
I guess, having met several folks before from Dimmick, I had watched the documentary Gasland, and I had kind of gotten a sense of what it was all about, and doing the scientific research and going down there and feeling the ground level ozone, because I felt it as well, because I've got bad lungs, and knowing that holding my toxicity license, I know that our membranes, our eyes and our ears and everything, our skin absorbs so much, and I could feel it. And And it was interesting how, again, you feel the burning of your eyes and the burning of the inside of your lungs. When I went home, I had to use my nebulizer. Okay, I think the thing that impressed me the most, the sadness that I felt for these people who are trapped there, their acceptance of this is what they have left. And what really saddened me was that they were exposing the children, our next generation, to accept this toxicity level, this
chemical genocide.
the chemical genocide, to accept this chemical genocide. And they're putting their children through it. And I think the sadness overwhelmed me as I saw all of this. And I'm like, what have we come to where people will not work together to stop this, to stand up to protect their children, to work together? I can't get over this. When you lose your water, you lose everything, and they've lost it. And I remember listening to this woman I was talking to from Dimmock, and she says, well, I still bathe my children in the contaminated water. And I'm thinking, how many people here are still bathing their children in this water? Because they don't understand that your skin absorbs the toxicity. And the sadness was just overwhelming. And I can't not get over it, that we are killing our next generation, and this is accepted by the government. This is accepted by the gas companies, that they think that we're acceptable collateral damage. And we need to stand up and say, no, we're not acceptable collateral damage for the shareholders' profitability. We are people. We have to be humanitarian and work together as people.
One other thing, too, that we should mention, there was one family there that that will even talk about this. Their bodies have become radioactive from their wells. They were drinking the water before they realized what was in it. And when the Time magazine came in and to do an article on this, and the lady who had showed us around, Diane, has a Geiger counter that will do both alpha and gamma.
Alpha, beta, and gamma.
Alpha, beta, and gamma. And she asked the reporter from Time magazine, would they like to, see a demonstration of the radioactivity of that lady's body? And the lady said yes, she would allow it to. And so they showed the reporters from Time magazine that the lady was absolutely radioactive. It was not put in the article. This shows you the censorship. They probably talked to someone from the gas company, and they said, "Don't put that in there. We're keeping this bit of business about radioactivity very quiet." So something that should have been in that Time magazine article, that people are actually, and this is her children too, her husband and her children, we were told. Time magazine did not put information that vital to everybody in the country, because this is being done in 34 states now. 34 states, and they're spreading out. Pretty soon they'll be doing it in all 50 states. Everybody in the country is going to be vitally impacted by this. And Time magazine did not feel that it was important enough to include in their article the fact that these wells are made radioactive, and these people, God only knows what's going to happen as far as their health is concerned.
I did some number crunching on how much water it used, and I was quoting Dr. Ingrafio's formula. They use 5.5 to 7.8 million gallons of water, and the gas industry says, well, we only use 5% of the toxic chemicals. Well, 5% of 6.5 million gallons of water is 320,000 gallons of toxic chemicals that they're using. So then I added that to the water, and then I started multiplying out, because they wanted to put 88,000 to 200,000 wells here in New York State. So I went with 80,000. They went with 80,000 wells at 6.6 trillion gallons of water that they would be using. They would make it unpotable forever. It takes this water and they make it undrinkable forever. And I did the number crunching and how many Americans use the most water per day. We use 70 gallons of water per day. In other countries they use 10 gallons of water. But anyways, I and it was like 285 million people that it takes, uses the same amount of water, 6.6 trillion. So it's 285 million people that they've just taken water away from. So eventually, it's going to be you.
Another thing that we witnessed was these big these big water tankers sucking the water out of the fire hydrants of Towanda. They're taking the municipal water supply, and from what I understand, their reservoir is going down like crazy because they're sucking all the water out, this nice, beautiful fresh water, which belongs to the taxpayers of Towanda, and they're putting it into these wells, these hydrofrack wells, and destroying it forever. And come the height of summer, if there's a drought, then the people of Towanda are not going to have any municipal water because the frackers will have taken it all. They'll have to be drinking out of the river, and the river water is already badly contaminated because DuPont is just up the stream. So DuPont is all putting all kinds of cute little things into the river that the people of Towanda will then have to be drinking because the frackers have taken all of their municipal water.
As well as remember in that county, when they had that blowout, all the frack fluid from that blowout flowed into that water, into that river as well.
Yeah.
So that you have the sediments from the heavy metals, the chemicals from DuPont, as well as the chemicals from the frack fluid that are all contained within, all continually flowing in that river as well. So they're actually getting a triple whammy. They're getting it from the frack fluid, the methane migration or the radiation, as well as then getting it again from the frack fluids from the even further contaminated river water.
The one pad that I recall, there were two holding ponds on it. One was fresh water, and the other was a holding pond for the frack water, for the produced water.
But there was one place that we visited that they were in the process of building, and that had a huge area that was being dug out that was going to be a holding lagoon for the frack water.
They had to be at at least 5 acres?
Oh,
at
gosh,
least
that
5
was
acres.
At least.
Yeah.
And that was at least, how many feet deep was that? It was a person could stand in there and the sides were...
much,
15,
it was 13, 14
15
feet at least.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have the photographs of that too.
Yeah.
But the thing is they lined this with plastic, and there's documentation where the plastic, well, anyone who knows any type of molecular structure of plastic knows it is porous.
We got up on the main road. I really kind of wanted to stop and stand there and see what I could hear when we were a ways away.
Yeah.
I don't know where the closest residence to that was.
I don't know where the...
You mean in that big station?
Yeah,
the
big
huge
station.
compressor
They were right
station.
on the other side. Remember it was kind of on one side of the hill, and we
Right.
went over, and if you look to the right, there was a field, and then there was a house right there. And the noise, I filmed it. You could just barely hear our voices, and you just heard this.
Wow.
It was thrumming through. I could feel it thrumming through my body because I have water around my heart. So it was actually making my heart act funny. And I don't know about you guys, but it really exacerbated.
Would you happen to know, Toshia, where how frequently are these stations along a pipeline? Are they like every mile, every 2 miles?
Stations?
The compressors, yeah.
I know that they have to have a compressor when they have it by the pad, because remember, because compressors are used to move the gas or the fluid around. Okay.
But once you get out onto the pipeline, for instance, on the way to New
Mike
York.
kept saying there's
How
3 more.
many-
Well, Mike kept saying what we were looking at. There's 3 more down the road.
Right, but it depends on what the size of the pipe determines the size of the volume of how much they're pushing it, and if it's uphill or downhill. Remember, so
Yeah.
I cannot get that number. I'm not a specialist.
I would like to know how many of these stations that make this horrible noise
All of them.
are going to have. How many are going to have
That's
to
what
be
I'm doing when
along
I'm
the
going
route
home.
to
I'm
New
gonna
York
Google
City?
Earth this area and see what I can see from
Yeah,
the
I was
satellite.
gonna
wanna
do
go
that.
do that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Awful.
It is.
Huge.
Well, Pat McCann, who has
Great
piggy pads, he called me from Colorado. He says, Carleton, he says, there's one thing the people in New Hartford have to understand, if they want it or not, because he's right in the middle. He lives in Rifle, Colorado. And he's like, they need to understand this is going to change their life forever.
What about the drill platforms themselves? Do you have anything to say about?
You know, I
drill
got on the internet,
platforms?
it was a
Um,
guy fell and died from one of those, one of the workers.
And he sued the landowner, did you see that? He
No, I
sued the
didn't.
landowner and he won.
Oh my God.
They hold the landowners responsible for anything that happens on the land.
One of the drill platforms that we saw, there were, probably 40 trucks just parked there. There, I mean, I don't know what all the buildings are and all of the trailers, but there was a tremendous amount of vehicles and equipment and whatever there on the pad. The sound, there wasn't, I don't know whether they were drilling at that point or not. At that point, there was no sound to speak of.
They were bringing up cuttings is what they were doing.
They were bringing
when
up
we were
cuttings.
We visited 3 separate well pads, one that was drilling, one that was before they drill, and one that
Had blown up.
Well, no, blown up, and then there was the one where they were done, and that was the last one.
Right.
Where once the drill rig
Next
goes
to the
away,
compressor
right,
station.
remember?
Yeah.
And that's why you have that compressor station there,
Mhm.
remember? Because
Yeah.
then they take away they throw dirt in the pond and stuff like that, so
Mhm.
nobody knows where they've toxified the area. The noise was very intensive while they were drilling. I don't know if you, I mean.
But we were all up above the noise and kind
Yeah.
of, that noise is going up because of the way that.
I just wasn't
land-
concentrating on that. I was.
I was.
Oh, there was a ton of noise.
It was a lot of noise, and
Sure.
in the background, you could barely
Ton.
hear you guys, and you guys were standing right next to me, you could barely hear
Oh, that's
me.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
And the ones that they were done, there was no noise because they were breaking the rig apart, and then the ones that were completely done, obviously the rig is gone. So the pads, we were taking the pads at 4 different stages.
Right.
And remember the one pad that had blown out, we saw people riding their 4-wheelers
Right,
around on the
right.
contaminated area, and you're wondering, where is their common sense? The other ones, you know, that's what we were talking about, how people think that this could bring in jobs, because once they're done drilling, then there's nothing left for them
That's
to
the
do.
bus
There's
cycle.
just pipes.
That's the bus cycle.
Exactly. And that's the biggest point, is right there.
Right to
is
that hits.
once the drilling is done, all that's left are the compressor stations, the contamination, and the pipes, and the methane leakage.
Well, another thing that people who are going to allow these things on their land do not understand is the sound of these compressors that are going to be pumping the stuff out of the well. And that's, as you say, it's 24/7 forever and ever, as long
Correct.
as there's methane there to be pumped.
Well, they have to remember, it's 220,000 foot-pounds per square inch, I think, if I remember correctly, to move the fluid along X amount of feet. So depending on, you know, the size of the pipe determines on how many compressors you need to move it X amount of feet. So it's 220,000 pound, you know, pressures that's required to move that.